911, what's your emergency?
Anthony Edward Sowell was an American serial killer and rapist known as the Cleveland Strangler. In 2009, the bodies of 11 women were discovered at his Cleveland, Ohio home, leading to his 2011 conviction for their murders. After being sentenced to death, Sowell died in prison from a terminal illness. The grim streets of East Cleveland offered little solace to the house on East 123rd Street, a perpetually overcrowded crucible where Anthony Edward Sowell was just one of 7 children born to Claudia Gertrude Garrison. The family swelled further when 7 orphaned cousins, survivors of their mother's chronic illness, were absorbed into the already suffocating household. This was no home. It was a dominion of fear, ruled by Garrison's erratic and brutal hand. According to Sowell's niece, Leona Davis, Garrison's abuse was a chilling ritual, enacted while her own children, frozen in silent terror, watched from the thresholds of adjoining rooms. Leona herself would bear the indelible scar of one such spectacle, stripped bare, exposed, then the searing, repetitive crack of electrical cords against her flesh until the coppery tang of her own blood filled the air. Yet this public cruelty was merely the prelude to a deeper, more insidious horror. From the tender age of 10, Leona became Sowell's private torment, subjected to a relentless, almost daily violation that gnawed away at her childhood for 2 agonizing years. And the rot spread. Leona later reported that the other males in the household also participated, transforming every corner of their shared existence into a landscape of terror and betrayal. The chill of January 24, 1978, did little to temper the fire in 18-year-old Sowell's gut as he stepped into the United States Marine Corps. Parris Island, South Carolina, swallowed him whole, spitting him back out a recruit forged in the crucible of its demanding training. From there, the technical intricacies of an electrician's trade awaited him at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, a skill he'd carry into his first official assignment. By July 13, 1978, he was routed with the 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing at Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, a familiar North Carolina landscape that would become his home base. But the world beckoned, and 1980 saw him trading familiar shores for a year overseas, serving with the 3rd Force Service Support Group in Japan before the call of Cherry Point eventually drew him back. On January 20, 1984, Sowell's orders landed him at Marine Corps Base Camp Butler, deep in Okinawa, Japan. A year later, the island life abruptly ended, replaced by a whirlwind 3 days at Camp Pendleton in California before his discharge on January 18, 1985. 7 years of service distilled into a handful of honors: a Good Conduct Medal with a Service Star, a Sea Service Deployment Ribbon, a Certificate of Commendation, a Meritorious Mast, and 2 letters of appreciation. The year was 1989. 3 months pregnant, she tried to slip away from Sowell's clutches, a desperate bid for freedom that ended in terror. His hands, swift and brutal, used a mundane tie and belt to shackle her wrists and ankles. A rag, foul and suffocating, silenced her screams. "He choked me real hard," she would later whisper to the police, the memory still raw. "My body started tingling. I thought I was going to die." The legal system, in its cold, detached wisdom, charged him in 1990 with kidnapping, rape, and attempted rape. Yet a plea bargain whittled down the horror to a single admission: attempted rape. For this, he served a mere 15 years, a blink in the eye of justice. By 2005, the prison gates swung open, unleashing him back into the unsuspecting world. For a brief spell, he blended in, a factory worker, punching the clock, until 2007, when unemployment checks became his new steady income. Neighbors spoke of him sifting through salvage, a solitary figure hawking scrap metal, a seemingly unremarkable existence. Yet, beneath the veneer of quiet normalcy, something festered. An insidious, cloying stench began to seep into the very fabric of the neighborhood, a smell so profoundly wrong that it drove residents to call the health department, their complaints echoing unanswered into the humid air. And then there was the digital shadow he cast. On online dating forums, he crafted a perverse persona, master seeking a submissive person to train. A chilling declaration, a predatory lure cast into the vast, unsuspecting ocean of the internet, waiting for the vulnerable to bite. Lori Frazier, niece to Cleveland Mayor Frank G. Jackson, found herself drawn into a relationship with Anthony Sowell shortly after his release from prison, a decision that would soon haunt her. She moved into his home, a place that, despite its outward appearance, harbored a disturbing secret, a pervasive, cloying stench. The sickeningly sweet odor of decay often hung heavy in the air. When she questioned it, Sowell offered a chillingly casual explanation. It was just the smell of his deceased stepmother. Yet the odor persisted, a constant, unsettling presence. Lori eventually moved out, but the memory of that smell lingered. She later tried to rationalize it, telling herself the putrid aroma must have emanated from Ray's sausage shop next door. Her departure date itself became a blurry detail, shifting between 2007 in her own recollections and 2008 in published reports. A friend confirmed, however, that by 2008, Lori had ceased spending time at the house, unable to shake the pervasive sense of dread. The invitation was simple, a lure whispered in the grimy twilight of September 2009. Sowell's place, for a hit of crack. Latundra Billups, desperate and weary, took the bait. But the haze of the drug quickly fractured. On September 22nd, she would recount to police. The air had thickened with a different kind of smoke. The acrid stench of rage. After a few drinks, Sowell's genial mask slipped, revealing a predator. He became a storm of fists and fury, his hands closing around her throat, stealing her breath, her consciousness, her very self. She faded into the black, violated. Weeks later, on October 29th, the quiet street outside Sowell's home shattered under the glare of flashing lights. Police, armed with a warrant, breached the threshold, but the house stood silent, a hollow shell. He was gone. The hunt began, a tight, anxious coil, until 2 days later, the trap snapped shut. Sowell was found, captured. The nightmare they thought was over. They were terribly wrong. The true horror lay not in his capture, but within the walls he'd left behind. The house, a seeming monument to neglect, held secrets that clawed at the sanity of those who found them. In the damp, shadowed earth of the basement, beneath a scant layer of soil, lay the first two women, their final resting place a shallow, violated grave. The discovery was a grotesque unveiling, but the terror deepened. On the third floor, in the suffocating silence of crawl spaces and forgotten corners, 4 more bodies emerged, each a silent testament to unimaginable cruelty. The air grew thick with the cloying scent of decay, a smell that would forever cling to the investigators' uniforms, their memories. The nightmare spilled into the yard. Shovels bit into the earth, unearthing not roots or stones, but 3 more human forms, and the fragmented remains of a 4th. Their silence a scream. Yet, the house wasn't done revealing its morbid treasures. Inside, in a forgotten bucket, a single human skull stared out from the gloom, its empty sockets a chilling tally mark. 11 lives extinguished, their stories ending in the unspeakable confines of one man's depravity. Most bore the brutal signature of manual strangulation, the intimate, terrifying act of hands closing around a throat. Others were found gagged or bound with ligatures, their final moments a desperate, suffocated struggle. The house wasn't a home. It was a charnel house, a tomb built of forgotten women. But the darkness of Sowell's crimes stretched further, ensnaring the living. 3 women, desperate for solace in the haze of crack cocaine, found only a deeper hell. He didn't just invite them, he drew them in, a spider weaving a web of false promise, luring them to his property, where their vulnerability was brutally exploited, their bodies violated in a horrific echo of his murderous appetite. When the cuffs finally clicked on Sowell, he was 50, a seemingly unremarkable man who had festered in that unassuming house for 4 years, his monstrous deeds hidden in plain sight. The $5 million bond set against him was a stark measure of the horrors he stood accused of. Yet, the path to justice was a protracted, agonizing crawl. What was meant to be a swift reckoning on June 2, 2010, became a frustrating carousel of delays. Month after month, the date shifted. September, then February, then May, then June 2011, as the legal teams wrestled with an overwhelming tide of evidence. Thousands of records and hours of surveillance footage, a chilling, silent narrative of his hidden life, captured by the watchful eye next door. For those who sought answers, who yearned for retribution, each postponement was a fresh wound, a prolonged torment. Finally, on June 6, 2011, the doors of the courthouse creaked open, and the long-awaited judgment began its grim march.
911, what's your emergency?
Help!